Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. Welcome to my office and happy Friday. You're probably watching this as a recorded webinar. Thank you for joining. I'm going to jump right in. Let me share my screen here. And there we go. Hopefully you can see my screen here. I believe you can. And let me put it in presentation mode. Come on. There we go. All right. Well, welcome again, and a view from the top of the Mackinac Bridge. Bridge got its name from the Mackinac Bridge. We started with the idea of building bridges between our customers, building digital bridges between people and processes to really help healthcare and help our customers with a variety of technologies. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Not too much of a commercial message because I want to talk about prior authorization and the type of work that we do. So if you're in the right space, if you're finding us on YouTube or via a recorded link I sent you, this presentation is all about how to use intelligent capture and AI to automate prior authorization processing. I'm coming to you live from my office on October 30th of 2020. Let me move my view up here, make it a little bigger so that I'm a part of things. I feel like I'm actually part of your view. Hopefully I am. So let's jump into it. You're not, because it's not live, you don't have the opportunity to use those buttons on the bottom of your screen that are showing up here or raise your hand. But I would welcome your questions. And there will not be a QA session here today, but feel free to email me. We'll give you the contact information at the end. But I'm Mike@bryjinc.com. You can certainly find me via our website as well. So let's jump right in. What is prior authorization? Prior authorization is a healthcare-based process. It's a process used by physicians and other providers who want to get paid. And they need to get paid, they need to get approval ahead of time for prescriptions or for a procedure by a health plan. So typically they're filling out a form and maybe some medical information behind it, some medical records, some clinical information. By the way, you see a form in the background there, Alexander Hamilton. This, of course, is not a real form. There's no PHI in this presentation whatsoever, so you don't have to worry about that. Prior authorization is called a bunch of different things by a bunch of different health plans and providers. Providers usually use a 4-letter word for it, which I won't repeat here. But these are all the different names. The most common one I think I find is prior approval. Seems to be the number one, but most people call it prior auth or prior authorization. So why should you even care about this? It sounds like a very arcane thing from many years ago, but it's a fixture of our healthcare system today, and it's how we make sure that docs are doing the right thing, health companies are paying for the right stuff. And it is inconvenient and very manual, and that's what we're going to talk about. But this affects your health and your wallets. We're going to talk about how it delays our care, specifically right here. It can delay your care. A little personal anecdote, just did a process myself, a procedure. My prior auth was authorized in March because of coronavirus, could not get it done until later in April or May, and the prior authorization had expired, needed to be renewed, further delayed my care. Finally got to the procedure, needed another one that had to go through a whole nother prior authorization process. So it can delay your care. In my case, it's kind of radical, and all things are crazy in the pandemic, but serious delays in care can happen. Serious adverse events are even worse. You need a drug, you need a procedure urgently. These prior auths can stand in the way of a doctor giving care to patients. It's a really big deal for us. If you really need something, and like me, you're a part of an HMO, you have to go through your primary care physician or PCP. It can be really painful. And then, gosh, we waste a ton of time. I was talking to my doctor about this week, and I said, hey, how much time are you spending on it? She goes, way too much. She had 4 prior authorizations in flight that were taking a ton of time for her. I'd much rather have my doctor seeing patients and nurses seeing patients instead of having to do this, but there's just a lot of time wasted on this. And the AMA has a bunch of stats if you ever want to go to their site and find it all. But it adds to a lot of cost, ton of cost for us. And that, of course, we're paying for that care, whether it's through our tax dollars or through our insurance payments or our co-pays. So we're really paying that cost. So prior authorization affects all of us. So you really should care about it. So I've developed a very quick agenda today. We're going to move very quickly, just do a quick introduction on Bryj and who I am, and then we're going to dive into prior auth in greater depth. So I founded Bryj a couple of years ago, 2 years in 2008. It's a fifth company that I've been a part of starting. The idea with Bryj is let's help companies turn documents into data. That's really it. There's a technology called intelligent capture out there. And now over the last 3 or 4 years, artificial intelligence and machine learning have really revolutionized it and changed it and made it much more affordable and practical to use. So we wanted to be a part of that. We've been working with intelligent capture in one form or another and called a bunch of different things and workflow for over 25 years. Myself, at least 25, maybe 30 years. And our specialty is in healthcare insurance. We also do some work in financial services and elsewhere, but healthcare and insurance are really the center of our universe. Myself, I have been focused most of my career on digital process transformation. And we believe that documents and faxes and scanned images and PDFs and all this stuff stands in the way of people having amazing processes that serve patients and providers and customers and such. So that's what we're about. I really tell people when they ask what I do, we connect process and technology with strategy. Hey, our strategy is we want to give our customers a better customer experience, or we really need to reduce our costs. That's what these technologies do. And while they're interesting technologies, and AI is a kind of an interesting buzzword these days, it's really about how do we serve members and patients? How do we make our healthcare system work better for all of us? We're proud of the many customers we have. We also have a lot of Blue Cross customers over the many years that we've been working as a team, and proud that some of those customers are also part of our new venture with Bryj. Prior authorization challenges. There's no shortage of them, for sure. So let's talk about them one at a time. First of all, there's a lot of them. According to CQH, by the way, all this information in this slide is from CAQH. They provide a yearly index where they dive into all these issues. 57 million prior auths are sent manually each year, and a small fraction beyond that are sent electronically. But I put the times question mark because they go back and forth many times, right? They might go to multiple referring physicians and the physician who actually does the work, plus your health insurance company, plus to you, might go to another hospital or another provider as well. So these bounce around quite a bit. So 57 million is the kind of the base number. It's probably many multiples of that, mostly on paper and fax. But about 80 to 95%, depending on whose numbers you use, are via fax. Yes, fax that originally invented in 1841. They're also really expensive. These prior auths, manual prior auths cost the industry about $14.24, fairly precise number, but certainly $15 to $20 is probably a good number for most of the interactions that I've seen. Very expensive. I put up the sign for luxury tax from Monopoly, but it really is expensive and it doesn't need to be that way. It creates enormous experience problems for providers, for employees at health plans and providers, back office people. I mean, prior auths are just difficult for everybody involved. I don't think there's anyone that I've run into in dealing with this problem that really finds the current prior auth model very good. And another reason why is it's just really slow. Process speed is incredibly slow. In this turtle race for prior auths, there's certainly no shortage of speed concerns, like in my case, where it can literally take months to get a prior auth complete and approved and get to service. Another big challenge, and the last one I'll kind of talk about here before we dive into a solution, is it's a very complex set of data elements that are required to get the information from the provider to the health plan and get this thing approved, right? So I've kind of color coded it and laid out some of the problems on your screen there. Is it urgent? Does it really have to be done? That might go through a separate process within the health plan. Many of these forms are handprint. Handprint is notoriously difficult to read. In fact, there's only really a couple products out there that do it well. There's important information like your member ID or your group ID or the NPI, National Provider ID, that need to be read. There's addresses, sometimes multiple addresses on a form. There's all kinds of business rules and routing that needs to be taking place in the middle of that form there. And then finally, there might be clinical information attached. So you've got a whole nother set of data that's completely unstructured. This information needs to be data entered, which takes time and expense, lots of keystrokes, lots of potential for error, lots of potential to slow down things as well, especially when you start having people analyze those attachments. So the industry has built this exception handling facility I call triage of people before a nurse to look at these documents. That introduces some challenges, right? To have people who are knowledgeable enough about the documents and the process to be able to make reasonably smart decisions early in the process, so that when the nurse gets it and does their review, that person has the right information. They can make a good clinical decision. So very, very challenging form, challenging data problem, challenging process problem. And again, as I pointed out, that's kind of where we live in these difficult process automation, intelligent capture issues. So let's dive into our approach to solving this problem. And I'm an incrementalist. And what I mean by that is the ideal would be to get rid of all the fax machines and paper and move right to electronic prior auth. Well, electronic prior auth was developed 10 years ago, and somewhere between 5 and 8% of the market is using electronic prior auth. It's just a very difficult problem, and ultimately we'll solve it. I hope within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll solve that problem. But it will literally take an act of Congress in order for people to be mandated to do this. So how do we deal with it in the meantime? And we believe that using intelligent capture to learn and read the forms, eliminating the data entry, passing that off to a sensible workflow solution that really lowers the cost of handling those exceptions and gives better control before finally enabling a nurse, technologically enabling that nurse to stay in their clinical system and do that is really enabled by ECM and workflow systems. So we're going to talk about that. We've color-coded it specifically for you today to kind of make sure that you're following along as we're kind of walking down this and thinking of this in terms of your map. And if you look about it in a different way, I'm going to talk about these particular different colored boxes in different ways. But this is the pipeline for our approach to this solution or this problem. There's some background capture tasks that happen from the fax coming in and getting classified and extracted. We'll talk about that. Then it'll be handed off to the clinical operations people to handle those exceptional circumstances where data or there's a process problem or business rule problem before it gets to the nurse, where they can actually make their decision faster, cheaper, and easier with higher quality, right? All of that's interacting into an ECM and workflow system to really drive the solution forward. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next couple of minutes. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Great. So let's talk about the first capture task, which is classification. Classification is identifying the document type. So you might have a form, page 1, page 2. You might have medical information, lab results, x-rays, all that kind of stuff. We want to identify those different documents. We capture them directly from the fax server and bring them right into the classification engine. That classification engine will separate faxes. Sometimes a doc will send several members worth of information to the health plan. We need to separate those so that they're each handled individually. We want to enhance images so they're more readable, not only for a human being, but also for the technology. We're going to identify those doc types. And one of the key things is this a form or an attachment? Because we're going to treat those a little differently. We're going to look for data on them differently. And then if we have exceptions of classification, we're not sure what document type this is, we can push that off to an exception process called verification, which we'll talk about in a moment. So that's the first step, that classification step. Then we move into extraction. In extraction, we're extracting data elements, barcodes, machine printed, typed information, handwritten information, check boxes, all that kind of stuff we're going to try to extract. There's data on forms, As you can see here, there's some data on the forms that we want to reach. We want to apply business rules and table lookups to make sure we got the right member and NPI and addresses and so forth. But we're also going to do thing, which might be a new word for you, a new phrase, word spotting. We're going to go through that document and look for particular words. So again, we can enable a workflow or enable the clinical review downstream. Lastly, we're going to do a full text OCR on the document. So when we save the document, it goes off to a content management system. The document can be Googled essentially from within the ECM. So you can find any word or phrase within that document. So really critical things here happening in the background in these background capture tasks. So no human beings here. This is just systems chunking through those images, those faxes, those scanned images, those PDFs to really kind of sort through them and extract data. The purpose of that is to get it to that green box at the end. But in the middle here, we've got this orange box, which is really what I call clinical ops or triage. It's folks that are not necessarily a nurse or a clinician, but they understand what the nurse is going to need, and they need to go through the information, verify that they've got everything there, and then handle anything that's fallen out in an exception workflow. So that's the part we're going to talk about right now, and really focus on that triage or clinical ops set. So the first thing in clinical ops, I'm going to show you this, is we need to verify data. I mentioned that all that intelligent classification work happened in the background, and what we want to do is make sure that to the level of quality we need on a field by field basis, we're able to verify that information before it goes further downstream. In the verification process, we're in for a rare treat here. My dog Finn is going to join us. He was interested in the webinar. So we're gonna handle any exceptions from the classification stage. We're gonna handle any extraction exceptions, like it didn't read the data, or what we call a low confidence field. It wasn't sure about it, or it broke a business rule. Hey, I was expecting a number here and I got a name, or both boxes were checked and that's not, that breaks a business rule. We're going to send any exceptions from this process into that exception workflow, into the ECM workflow system, so that it can be handled as an exception based on what it is. So let's talk about what verification looks like. So verification, the difference between verification today, if you're doing prior auth manually or on paper or image, many people are just keying all this information. And the idea is we want to jump through that keying and just have people verify any characters that are not correct. So this is that interface. And if I hit through, you see that even though this information is hand printed, I'm able to go through it by just hitting enter because it's getting the information correct. And just to give you an idea on screen, here's the image and here's the data that's being read. So you see that we're going through. I got Williams. This is my doctor, Dr. Zamoyski. So it uses US Census data to find first and last names that are common and bangs against that to make sure that it improves that data. We do great with addresses. We use a product on the bottom level in our platform that reads all the US postal data. Use every letter, every package that goes through the post office every day, about 300 something million pieces. It actually reads those. So it does amazing work. You can see that we're doing a great job in reading that address here down on the bottom. And even though it was hand printed, we read this very well. Again, no PHI here, right? It's all fake data, but real addresses to show you that we can read those addresses with a high degree of accuracy. Even when they're not really written that well, we can still get Arthur Street here quite well. We can read hospital names and killer information. I need to make sure I get that insurance ID or member ID or group ID really well. And you can see that we can read those. I just want to give you a feel for how quickly you can walk through this, or a clinical ops person could do this, reading a PIN, a TIN or an NPI, also bouncing that up against your TIN or NPI database can be critical. And we can walk through these numeric data really quickly. Dates, same way. And we had this, by the way, for this demo, we had it set up so that it stopped on every field. Typically, you're only going to see the ones that fall below a particular confidence or broke a business rule, but just want to give you an experience of that interface. We can also do things like read words on a page. So I might want to spot that word urgent on the page, whether it's on the top or bottom, with a high degree of confidence, because even if, as in this case, the person who filled out the form clicked non-urgent, but they wrote urgent on it. I want to make sure I identify that. And you can see that these red circles here, we've identified it with a very high degree of accuracy, even though we didn't know where it was or where it would be on the page. And even though it wasn't written really well and maybe on a little bit of an angle, we can handle that. And that word spotting capability is really critical, really valuable. We can even create a list of words and go through the medical content looking for that list of words. So lots of interesting things we can do with word spotting that could be very valuable. So next thing we're going to talk about in the second and last thing in the clinical ops triage part is handling exceptions. So in verification, we're really trying to get that data quality high, but we don't necessarily, it's high speed, right? We don't want to spend a lot of time focused on handling business rules there. We want to get into a tool that says, hey, we had this issue. I'm not sure about the member ID, or I'm not sure about this checkbox. Can you have somebody look at it and confirm it based on the context of the rest of the document? I call that an exception workflow, and it'll push data to different queues. Some of the things over on the right here, you might want to confirm if it's really urgent, like that situation where the checkbox was checked not urgent, but it was written urgent on there. Typically, customers will have rules around how to handle that. We want to just validate it before we send it on to a nurse. Key things like, did we get the member right? Did we get the provider right? Did we get some of these critical business rules right that were checked on the form? Is this a new case or an existing case? As in my case, that case went on for several months, and you'd want to add information to an existing case, but you need to make sure that it's not a new case as well. Finally, there can be very complex business rules in a workflow that really don't fit as well in that intelligent capture workflow or that verify piece. So we want to make sure that we knock it down here. And finally, we want to get that PDF of the scanned images or faxed in images stored in the ECM, the Enterprise Content Management System. So it's available right away, and it's full text, so we can do searches on, which I'll show you in a moment. So what we try to do is kind of simulate a little workflow here. And in this workflow, these 4 boxes represent different queues. Those queues in these red boxes show you the number of items in that queue. And hopefully it would be there'd only be one item in each queue, but as you might imagine, those would be update automatically and populate as new stuff is coming in. You can move information between queues. You can assign people only one queue. All that kind of stuff can be handled really easily. But I'm just going to click on the urgent queue here and show you how exception processing really works. In exception processing, we have an interface where we're going to review the document within its context, usually a whole page, and then we're going to try to capture information or look at the information that was captured from that document. An example of that is keywords. Keywords are information about that document that the intelligent capture system gave and stored in the ECM system so that we can find it later on. So that very quickly we can find documents as we're trying to look them up. We can also do things like cross-references. A cross-reference is all the documents that are for this member maybe, or for the provider, or potentially for this case. We can look those up very quickly, very easily, having them cross-referenced. Finally, at the last step in the process, I have this sending off to a product called Dynamics, but at the end, we can create a list of tasks that people can do, maybe send it off to somebody else for review. The system in the background might go, oh, this person completed this, but it also needs to go through this review. But if I'm completed with it, I can also just quickly send the information off to Dynamics or send it off to another system that would ultimately process it with the nurse. I call that a clinical system, but you get the idea. We want to click that send to Dynamics button and send it off on its workflow. So I want to get to the last step in the process here, which is the nurse workflow. And the key things here are, what we really want to do is make sure that we're keeping the nurse in their existing workflows, in their existing system, that they can easily find stuff or stuff can find them. I always like to say that docs should find the nurse. They shouldn't have to go find them, right? It should be presenting that, and I'll show you that in a moment. We also want to give them the benefits of the word spotting process. Hey, nurse, we found breast cancer and diabetes and COPD and ibuprofen in this document, and we want to let you know that they're there. That might trigger some additional looking through the record to identify certain documents they really want to look at. And of course, they can search, full text search. We'll show you that in a moment. But really critical is, how do we enable the nurse to get through that review quickly? We're not providing the clinical system. We're trying to make the clinical system better, right? So let's talk about the nurse enhanced review. And this is, again, a fake case, right? With a product from a company called Cognizant, Trizetto, which is their Care Advance product. But it's just a case management product for utilization management. And I found a case here that I want to work on. When I click on that, it shows me that the tasks, and I'm on a task. And when let's move this guy over. When I click on that task, immediately pops up that, hey, we have one document associated with this. And when we hover over it, it shows that there's one document. And when I click on it, it brings that document up. So the nurse, of course, I don't have two screens here, but typically a nurse will have two screens up. And this would pop up on the second screen, and they could be staying in their clinical system while they're checking out this document. Now, this document looks a little different in that it has a table of contents. Because we've classified documents, we have the ability to identify each document that came attached to that form to enable a nurse to go right to historical medications or right to encounter level documents. So there's lots of different things that can be done here, again, to enable the nurse review, speed, cost, quality. Another thing we do is that full text search component. So I'm in the record, I'm in that, and I just want to go look for the word urgent in document. I would, of course, I see that there's two cases here of urgent, and it found them both. So the key thing here is the document's tagged so that the nurse can go right to a particular spot on the document. Want to look for a particular drug or a particular diagnosis code, for example, it definitely can go right in there and do that. So providing a full set of tools to the nurses is really critical. So that's really it. I wanted to show you a mock-up of a solution to give you a vision for how this might work. Now, this is not very typical of what I see in many of the customers and interactions that we have with health plans, but it is a possibility. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing possibility. Some of our customers are just using the capture piece. Some are using capture with much more of a focus on workflow. There's obviously a variety of ways that you can tackle this, including maybe starting with an ECM workflow if you don't have that. So let's talk a little bit about the last step in our agenda, which is really getting started. How do you get started? How do you get moving? And I think there's a bridge in the keys, if I'm not mistaken. But how do you get started is pretty straightforward. So our customers ask us questions like, hey, how do I know if this is going to work for us? Is it going to cost a lot of money? What kind of benefits, what kind of cost benefit analysis am I going to see? What can I tell my CFO about this? And finally, how quickly? What's the ROI on this? How many months, how many years will it take to pay for itself? How do we measure that? I'm sure if you talk to many software vendors will go, oh, this is really inexpensive, lots of value, really fast, tons of savings, ROI in months, right? But while I respect their opinion, I want to be like Missouri, right? Show me the results. And so how we do that at Bryj, we've created this thing called an innovation proof of concept. We do charge for that, but the idea is 30 days, a really short window to test these concepts empirically with your documents. So we typically sign a business associate agreement with our customers and then look and build a system just for their documents in this solution. Then we measure the heck out of it. How did the technical accuracy work for these documents? How did the workflow work to improve the process? And most importantly, for a lot of business decisions these days, is what's the cost like? What's the cost benefit? What kind of quantitative benefits am I going to see? What kind of qualitative benefits is it? What are the assumptions we're making in this model? We provide all that, we show all our math, and we believe that's the way to go. People should be able to make informed decisions, not faith-based purchases. And I'll just send a quick plug for a blog I wrote just last week that you can find on our website about what I call a demo and a prayer. A lot of systems like this do a quick demo, maybe something like this, and go, this is going to work great for you. We believe that there should be evidence. There should be lots of really thoughtful, practical, empirical evidence that can help a customer make a purchase. So we deliver a brief document called a business case that shows the analysis of the technical components, analysis of the process and likely improvements, and then a benefits calculator, which shows you how much you're going to save if indeed that's the case, and hopefully it is. We also record a demo of the system, so people can look back at it and kind of understand how it works, maybe show it to other areas. And again, we do that in about 30 days at a very low cost, substantially lower than anyone I've heard do this before. So if you're interested, please reach out. We're very proud of the work that we do in our POCs, and hopefully it intrigues you and you'd like to engage in a conversation about that. So just some concluding thoughts. Prior authorization is a necessary evil in the world. Most of them come through in fax or on paper. And while we might get to an electronic version of this process in 5 to 10 years, right now we're stuck with a very, very difficult, very manual process. We believe that the advent of intelligent capture and machine learning combined with workflow and ECM provide an incredible solution to solve this problem today at a very low cost, and with a POC that can prove that in very short order. So I just want to say thank you, and hopefully this was valuable to you. Hopefully it makes sense, and hopefully you'll consider sending some questions to us. I promised you my information. Here is how to contact me personally. It's my Bryj email and my mobile number. Also, feel free to jump on my LinkedIn page and connect. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. And also you can check out our Bryj Inc. website and check out the blogs, which we talked a lot about prior authorizations in our blogs. Again, I hope this was valuable. Thank you for taking some time to view this video, and please stay safe, stay well, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon. Be well. Bye-bye.